How's it going today, my friend?
Hey, man. Looks like you got things working.
Yeah, I was working
Yeah.
overtime before the show started. I'm hoping that they allow us to come on the air. But Larry, I want to ask you something. We see, and I want to get right into it, especially with the Middle East. What is going on over there? I see you got a mic.
Bring,
Yes.
yeah, you got to
What
bring the mic down a little bit.
what is going on in the Middle East right now? The U.S. has one or two aircraft carrier groups steaming towards the Mediterranean. There were reports that Britain was preparing air bases in Cyprus. The United States upped its number of troops in occupied Syria, and they've also upped their troops in Jordan. What are we looking at a major conflagration that's about to take place?
If you would ask me that a week ago, I probably would have said, yeah, I think we're heading towards a big war. Uh, Now I don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is because Israel's in such bad shape. So, the Eisenhower, the aircraft carrier Eisenhower that was in the Red Sea, is headed back to Virginia, to Norfolk. And um, supposedly the Roosevelt, I've heard two different ones. The Roosevelt or the Wasp are supposed to replace it. Uh, but so what? Its job of trying to stop the Houthis from launching anti-ship missiles hadn't worked out too well. Uh, those 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 Houthis are worse than a bad case of crabgrass. Man, can't get rid of them. They keep coming back and taking. They're hitting ship after ship. Um, and if they get some advanced weapons via Russia, then we could really the situation could even get more grim for the West. Uh, the British have been on those air bases in Cyprus for 50 years or longer, so that's not new. What is sort of new is they've been actively cooperating with Israel in conducting airstrikes, air operations in southern Lebanon. And Hezbollah's head, Nasrallah, put them on notice. Hey, if you get involved with this, then you're going to pay a price. And it was touted as it was presented in the media as a threat. They're threatening Cyprus. Well, no, he wasn't threatening Cyprus. He was threatening the British on Cyprus. And actually, went to some lengths to make that clear. What's really interesting is you've got this split taking place between the Israeli politicians, Netanyahu and his civilian cabinet, and the military leadership. Military leadership right now is saying, basically, man, we need a rest. We, we can't keep doing this, okay? We've been fighting Hamas primarily for the last 8 months. The Israelis claim, we've killed 14,000 of them. Okay, good. You've killed 14,000 Hamas. And what's the head of your army say? What's the head of your navy say? They all say the same thing. We can't beat Hamas. Hamas cannot be defeated because it's an idea. It's not a one intact military unit. Um, then the New York Times reported yesterday as well that the Israeli military leadership said, hey, we don't have enough ammunition. The reservists that we keep calling up to, join the ranks, they're not showing up. They're refusing to serve. With no ammunition, with no troops, and the ones we do have, they're tired, so they need a rest. So all this talk about, we're going to attack Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, drive them out. It's just delusional. Think about this. In 8 months, Israel has not been able to defeat Hamas. And let's say Hamas's total numbers are around 20 to 30,000. Well, Hezbollah is 100,000. And Hezbollah's got something that Hamas doesn't. It's a trained army.
Mm-hmm.
They are better equipped, better armed, better trained, and they got the fortifications rival, if not exceed, anything that Hamas had built in Gaza. So if the Israelis, decide that, oh yeah, we're going to go in, we're going to go and whip some ass. The only ass that's going to get whipped is their own. That's what's going to happen.
But see, Larry, I think that because of the political situation in Israel, it is leaning more towards war than not, because you have a desperate leader who is doing everything they can to hold on. You have a disconnect from the government and the people because there are mass protests all the time in Israel,
Right.
and you have the military, which once had this aura of invincibility and dominance across the whole spectrum of the Middle East. You had all of that, and now it's all starting to fall apart. And when a leader or a ruler or a country has ruled so or has dominated the landscape so fully for decades, and they start seeing their leadership or their power being threatening, I think that pushes it closer to war.
Well, it does. I mean, but um, you know, if you could have all those conditions in your life and say, I'm ready. I'm going to get in the ring and I'm going to box Mike Tyson. Okay, but but the problem is you're sitting in a wheelchair. Okay, so explain to me how you're getting out of that wheelchair and crawling into the ring and then being able to stand up against Mike Tyson. That ain't happening. And that's sort of what the condition Israel's in right now. They've got their air power is still intact, so that they can just bomb the stuffing out of the Hezbollah positions. But for God's sake, haven't we learned anything yet? You go back to World War II, and you remember how many days, more than a week of throwing big shells fired from these big Navy guns on Iwo Jima. I mean, just and bombed it and shelled it and strafed it and bombed it and shelled it, day after day. The Marines like, oh man, let's land. Nobody there. That didn't turn out too cool. The Japanese popped up out of the holes. They found out that, hey, these bombs are not going to penetrate down deep into these bunkers. Well, same for Hezbollah. Exactly the same. So, Israel will launch this mass, they'll use up all the 2,000-pound bombs that we've sent them. They'll crater the landscape of southern Lebanon. Then they'll be confidently coming in saying, hey, we whooped them. And then all of a sudden, Hezbollah's going to be popping up out of spider holes right and left, shooting them and killing them.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, the political agitation is there. The anger over the fact that Hezbollah has effectively driven Israel out of northern Israel because of its combination of rockets, missiles, mortars. Mm-hmm. So the Israelis, they want to get revenge, but they get down to, the heart of the matter, which is, do you have rested, well-equipped, well-trained forces? And so here's what Israel's talking about doing. We're short of ammunition. Our soldiers are dog-ass tired. And we're going to attack basically a military unit that is well-armed, well-trained, and ready and rested to go. How do you think that's going to turn out?
Right.
That's why, whatever appalling inhumanity some of the Israeli military commanders demonstrate, they're at least not completely stupid. They sat down and looked at that and go, no, we're gonna hold off because they didn't want to step, get pulled out of their wheelchair, shoved into the ring with Tyson in order to get pummeled. And I think that's exactly what will happen to him.
Well, do you think? I know recently the attack on Russia's Belgorod and other regions of Russia, and Vladimir Putin making the statement that they will respond, and calling in the U.S. Ambassador, and told them that Russia will respond. How do you think Russia will respond, and will it be a meaningful response in a way that forces the United States to pause its provocations?
Well, it's already started. So when Ambassador Lynn Tracy was called to the foreign ministry, she got a stern talking to from Sergei Lavrov. And one of the things he's reportedly said was, "We're no longer at peace." So those are pretty alarming words coming from a diplomat. That's another way of saying we're at war. Mm-hmm. Tracy went back. I'm sure she wrote up her reports, zipped it back to headquarters there on 23rd and C Streets in Washington, D.C. And I guess it was the next day, Lloyd Austin, picks the phone up and calls his counterpart, Belousov, the new defense minister in Russia. And it wasn't, he wasn't trying to sell him Girl Scout cookies or invite him to a July 4th barbecue. He was trying to, I think, gauge how pissed off are the Russians. And he found out they're really pissed off to the point that Belousov, I guess, reportedly told him, said, "You fly any more of your drones into the Black Sea, they're dead, okay? We're shooting them down. Don't believe me? Try me." And what's interesting is since that conversation, my understanding is U.S. has not flown any more drones into the Black Sea. We are, though, flying some fixed-wing surveillance aircraft, KC-135, the Rivet Joint. But I think the Russians are going up, intercepting, interfering. They're not just letting them fly along by themselves. So, that's the first response that Russia's made. The second is that they've stepped up their attacks on airfields, infrastructure, manufacturing facilities. So it's just what you're seeing. Someone I don't know who came up with the term, but they described it as the anaconda strategy. So you get one of those big ass snakes that wraps itself around you and squeezes and squeezes and squeezes until your eyeballs pop out, and at that point you're dead. Well, that's what Russia is essentially doing to Ukraine. All along that line of contact from north to the south, Russia is advancing, attacking, advancing, attacking, and they're not doing it with large units. They've actually shifted. It's like something out of Mad Max with Mel Gibson. They shifted to motorcycles, motocross bikes. Mm-hmm. So, they come riding across. And the reason they're doing that is it's a better defense against drone attacks, which is primarily what Ukraine has left to rely on. They don't have to worry about being in fully armored vehicles. It turns out some of the armored vehicles, tanks, and troop carriers are too potentially vulnerable to the drone attacks. And so, but when the Russians are launching these attacks like this, they're breaching the Ukrainian lines. Ukrainians, it's like you remember the Monty Python movie, Quest for the Holy Grail. Run away! Run away! That's what they're doing. They're running away.
Well, devil's advocate for a second. What would be America's response had Russia sent cluster munitions over Miami Beach or kill U.S. citizens on Miami Beach?
Thank you for referencing that. I was the one who first wrote that, and it got picked up like a meme. Aussie Cossack was using it. In fact, someone said, "Here, let me play a quote from the Aussie Cossack," and they played it back. I go, "Dude, that's me." Oh, but no, but it's the what I posited was, let's say that we're in a war with the Mexican cartels, and they're killing 100,000 Americans a year. That's a lot of people getting killed. Almost twice the number that died in Vietnam over 15, 16-year period. And so, yeah, we're going after, and then we find out that the Russians are arming the cartels with the equivalent of an attack missile and and so let's say they fire it at Homestead, which is just south of Miami. It misses Homestead and keeps going, and it hits Miami Beach, cause civilian casualties. We would be a little cranky, okay? Yeah, would be people be demanding that we bomb Russia back to the Stone Age or whatever. So I always ask with this kind of analysis, put yourself in their shoes, and it's like the "What would Jesus do" armband. Yeah, what would you do if you were in that position? And we know the answer immediately. So when we know that the answer is, we would never allow a Russian presence, military, that included annual military exercises on our borders. Why in the name of God do we think we can enforce that on Russia? We can't, and they won't allow it. That's why this war is going on, and that's why the United States, I think, is ultimately going to lose, because Russia's fighting for something that they consider essential to their existence.
But why does Russia allow this to go on? Because the little screws keep turning in my head, the little lug nuts and everything. And I'm saying, okay, and I'm not advocating war. I'm just saying America would never allow Russia to set up a military base in Mexico. But she thinks that she is able to set up one in Ukraine, and Russia allows that to happen. And then we have this blowback effect right now of what's going on in Ukraine. The same as with all along Russia's periphery, America is doing. Why didn't Russia take the initiative to prevent that from taking place?
Well, we've always confused Russian patience with weakness. And, I'm sure if you've ever been around a bar fight, the guy shows up, starts finger poking the other guy. Turns out the other guy could be a professional fighter, and it's just like, I'm not going to hurt this person, because, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know who they're messing with. But at some point, that person, the finger pointing gets to the point and say, okay, I gotta teach him a lesson. And then bam, the beat down starts. That's exactly what what we're seeing take place now in Ukraine. The Russians at the outset didn't deploy that many troops, and they were really hoping that they could create enough military pressure that would compel Ukraine to negotiate, but not enough that it would require full-scale combat operations. And it was only after Joe Biden, Austin, Secretary of Defense, and then British Prime Minister Boris Johnson weighed in and canceled the negotiations, and then the peace process ended. That Russia started expanding, and so now what we're seeing is, over the last year alone, Russia recruited on average 40,000 men a month. And the size they added almost 500,000 new soldiers to their units. And they're continuing at that pace, at least 30,000, Western sources acknowledge, but I suspect it's higher. And so they're growing their army. At the same time, they are inflicting casualties at a rate that's just, it's on par with anything we saw in World War II. When you're talking 2,000 casualties a day.
Wow.
Think think of how upset Americans were with respect to U.S. casualties in Iraq, that after 10 years, it was 4,000 people total. And we're like, oh my God, this is awful. You know, that's 2 days in Iraq and Ukraine. So the level of ferocity of the attacks by the Russians have increased. Ukraine's not able to stand it. And so here the West is, having provoked this fight, and yet we don't even have the means to step in and stop it. Oh, well, we do have the means. All we have to do is cut off Ukraine. But in terms of funding the war and being able to make sure that Ukrainians stay well armed and continue to fight, no, we've exhausted ourselves. You know, and it's not just one weapon system. It's one we can't produce enough of anything, whether it's artillery shells, ATACMS, Patriots, HIMARS. That's number one. But number two, we found out through a study done 2-3 months ago that on like 12 major weapon systems that the U.S. military industrial complex produces that are considered cutting edge and necessary for the U.S. military, the materials required to produce those are on China. So we don't have the resources at hand to produce what we need. And here we have China that's sitting in the catbird seat. They control what we need. And it's like, it's like if you walk up to you see a guy at a grocery store, and you say, hey, you're fat, stupid, and ugly. And then you find out he's the owner of the store, and he's the one that makes the decision whether you can shop there.
Yeah.
What do you think? Calling him fat, stupid, and ugly is going to get him to welcome you into his store and let you buy his stuff? I don't think so. Do just the opposite. In fact, that's what the Chinese have put up with this, because we've been, you've got American politicians talking about China's the enemy. We're going to be at war with China. And, I'm not saying the Chinese are, the country equivalent of Mother Teresa, this charitable, good-hearted woman. But they haven't been sitting around invading other countries. Mm-hmm. All they've been seeking to do is to grow their economy. And yeah, have they stolen technology? Absolutely. Does the United States steal technology if it can? Bet your ass. So, enough with the double standard of, we're outraged that those Chinese would do this. And, please. That's why we have intelligence services. Steal that stuff if we can get our hands on it, all right? So here the Chinese have been watching, they've been taking insult after insult from us, frankly. And now my understanding is they're going, no, this is going to stop. We're not putting up with this anymore. And, the United States is going to suffer the consequences. That's why we are really stupid. I mean, really. I mean, we have fallen to a level of stupidity in this country that is just astonishing. But then, what do you expect from this? Coming from the same people who say, yeah, there's no such thing as men or women. It's whatever you're feeling like today.
Larry, you sound just like I sound. I was talking about the exact same things on the show yesterday about this gender stuff, this crazy, this the leaders have become detached from reality, and the policies seem as though they're so far away from the truth that they're far away as the East is from the West, and seems like nothing is getting through to them. No matter what you say or what you do. Back to China for a second. It produces 93 to 95% of all goods on the store shelves. There was a report that said that stores have 2 weeks worth of goods at tops if something goes on or there's an embargo or a war. And then we look at, they were just saying the first half of 20 24, over 500 banks closed. Now, and I'm saying to myself, okay, China is the largest investor in the United States, has the largest currency holdings, debt holdings of the United States,
Right.
And it's the largest trading partner. And the Pentagon report said that China's shipbuilding is over 200% larger than the United States. But then a congressman said a few days ago that the Chinese shipbuilding is 500 plus times as large as the United States and NATO. Any sane person would step back from that situation of escalation to say, hold on. If I'm going to escalate, let me have a long view of it instead of trying to go into this right now when they have almost all the advantages on their side. Why aren't there any leaders or any adults in the room in London, Brussels, Berlin, Paris, and Washington?
Well, we don't. We're an empire in decline, and we're refusing to come to grips with that. It's one thing. You remember Kodak company, Kodak?
Yeah.
Go back 30 years ago. Kodak was one of the wealthiest, companies. You're going to buy it, you had to pay a premium to get the stock. It was at the top of the heap. But the market changed. We got these things called computer chips.
Yeah.
No longer did you have to, put film in a camera. I mean, you and I talk about you and I talking about that to some teenager today, they're going to look at you cross-eyed like, man, what are you talking about? Film? I got something on my teeth? No. So, and rolling it up and getting it exposed and then getting it processed, all the film. That went away. And I mean, it went away quick. That's what's happening to the United States in terms of its economic and military position in the world. We have been used to being, top of the heap, king of the hill, as Frank Sinatra was singing about New York. But we're no longer that. Militarily, yeah, we look good on the outside, but man, on the inside, we're not running right. We're not able to produce. We're not able to match like what Russia's producing in terms of artillery shells. And it's not just a matter of flipping a switch and putting people to work in a factory. I mean, the level, the different layers of problems we have in terms of lack of educated population,
right,
drug addicted population, bunch of fat ass people have been eating too many Doritos and Dunkin' Donuts, who are physically not in shape, lack of the actual raw materials we need to produce that, lack of factory, just keep running down the list. It's not one thing. It's not like you get upset. Okay, hey, put on a few pounds over the holidays. I'm going to start dieting, and you can start dieting. You can lose weight, and saying with that, I'm going to start exercising. Okay, you can do two things, but as well as I do, once you start that, it's not you don't start that on Monday and Tuesday. What kind of man? I lost 10 pounds, and I look and feel great. No, it doesn't happen. You won't lose much weight initially, and when you start exercising after not exercising, man, your body's going to hurt.
Yes.
Well, the same thing happens to society. I mean, if we when or if we're able to make this turnaround to try to put our own house in order, it's going to hurt like hell. It's not going to be easy. And while we're struggling to do that, man, the world marches on. And that here is Russia, which is now really, I would say, the dominant and probably the most powerful military in the world, one that's trained, that's competent, They've been, forged in the fires of Ukraine. And they don't have as many men as China, that's for sure, but they are sure operationally light years ahead of China. And us, for that matter.
Well, I was driving down the street. It's amazing that you said that about Kodak. Just 2 days ago, I had my mother in the car, and we were riding down the street. And I was like, with my daughter in the back, I was like, that used to be the Kodak place, because I said that used to be a Blockbuster building, and I'm showing them, and they're like,
Blockbuster.
Yeah,
What's that?
Yeah, my daughter's like, what is he talking
What?
about?
Wait, you say, well, you
Do
go in
you
and read VHS tapes, and she goes, what? Yeah.
But do you believe that's why America is striking out the way she is, because of the condition that she now finds herself in? No longer the dominant power, no longer can impose her will on it, no longer the dominant economic power, no longer the so-called, I remember one time she used to call herself the world's only hyperpower, no longer being the hyperpower, or not even being the dominant superpower. Right now she is a power among powers. And when you've ruled so universally for decades, couldn't that be in the psyche of the leadership, that they don't want to accept anything except total American dominance, and they're willing to take it to the next level for that?
Well, a symptom, it's not the cause, but the fact that we've had this push for DEI, diversity, equality, inclusion, where we're going to judge people according to the pigment of their skin, and yet we're not even consistent across that. See, if you're Asian, actually you're white. Okay, Asian doesn't get to count as colored people, and then you go, they're black, like Kamala Harris, she black, and you go, no, she's Indian. Okay, and you know what they call Indians? Caucasians. So, that girl's white. She's not black, but hey, we get to pretend. So once we start pretending that things that you have no control over in your life determine whether or not you are allowed to advance or to achieve. So it's like I had no control over the color of my hair, the color of my eyes, the color of my skin. That's what I was born with. I had no choice. Now, what I choose to do with that, that's on me. Mm-hmm. And yeah, there have been, there's been discriminatory practices in the past where they'll judge people by the color of their skin and say, oh, you can't do this, or you're prohibited from doing this. But, it's not like what you and I knew 50 years ago in the 60s. It is it is a much better, much more open world. And yet, with that increased freedom, instead of bringing us together and really having, that's one of the reasons I like Russia. You go to Russia, man, they don't judge people on skin color. They're just, they look at it just like you say, oh, there's some roses, there's some orchids, there's some tulips, but it's not like, it's not this racial thing that we've got, this racial fixation we got in the United States. And so here's the United States now saying, a man, you got to call him they or it. Or you can't, I mean, we got, we do this pretend. And people, they're actually very serious about it. Oh, absolutely. God almighty, you can't say that. And, and you're looking and said, the man's got that's not a woman. He's got male genitals, okay? Twigs and berries, as they called it in the movie. It's just, and then they want you to admit to what's not real. And so it's no surprising that with that becoming such a dominant theme in the culture, that the rest of the society is sort of imploding on itself. Yeah. It is. I think it's all linked. I think it is symptomatic of this decline of empire.
Yes, sir.
And we want to pretend like this is the first time it's happened. Hey, baby, get in line. Go ask the Egyptians, the Romans, the Greeks, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, down the list. Uh, the Mayans, the Aztecs, you know, the Incas, we keep going. It is sort of in human nature that you build yourself up to a powerful position and then you forget what it was that made you powerful in the first place.
And
And
that's because, and not cutting you off, Larry. That's one of the reasons it's like that is because they take God out of things. And when you take
yeah,
God out of the core, in the center of things, everything else unravels around it. And there's an old, and I'm not being religious on the show, but there's an old scripture, an old verse that says, and though they did not like to retain God in their consciousness, God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which were not seemly. And we're seeing that the leadership of America and the Western world continually implementing unseemly, ungodly policies, and we're seeing the unraveling of the Western world and the Western Empire. What say you on that matter?
well, no, I agree. Look, regardless of whether you profess faith in Judaism, Christianity, which are many varieties of Christianity, Islam, a couple of varieties of Islam at least. The actual the religious orientation when you live a life and you grow up and you cultivate the attitude in a child and it persists into adulthood of you're not your own creator. You are the result of something greater than you, and that this spiritual power that exists is something that judges that it's not just what you do here, but what you do here matters for later on. That it introduces this concept of eternity, and because if you get down and if you just believe that what I do doesn't matter because nobody's going to judge me or hold me accountable. Basically, if that's your attitude, you're going to be a sociopath. You're going to be dangerous to be around. And so, what I think comes from all of the great religions is that inculcates in people a sense that what their actions today reflect upon them in the eternal life in the future. So even having that belief that, man, what I do now could affect me after I die ends up affecting how you behave today. So, and once you completely divorce that that spirituality from the people, I think you're right. You just set them up for destruction. So and frankly, that's one of the reasons I think the West just hates Russia. This Russia phobia,
Now,
because
in close,
they've returned to their Christian roots. They are very devoutly Christian, and yet they found a way that Muslims and Jews exist in the society, are welcome to the society, embraced, and so there's a religious harmony in the midst of that, you know, certain religious belief.
well, in closing, Larry, you know, this it seems like the system itself is imploding, like we just said, and one of the problems is when you point out the things that you and I were just talking about, the mainstream media, the government officials, and every platform will then demonize you for speaking the truth or for manifesting something that they profess to believe in, and
Yeah,
and you become the odd man out because they're trying to force you to conform to madness. And when you don't conform to madness, then they get angry at you and vilify and demonize you. That to me, that is a telltale sign of a collapsing and imploding infrastructure, society, and an empire. What do you say last words before I let you go, because you've been so generous with the time?
Well, no, I always, I always enjoy our conversations. The George Orwell was really a prophet. Um, you go into the Bible, you can read about the prophets Isaiah and Jeremiah, but we had a modern day prophet in our midst with George Orwell, was where he was describing. He really didn't understand. He understood human nature and um, how it can be used in such perverse ways that it crushes the human spirit and destroys people, or it can be used in ways that it elevates people. And just the fact that we're now living in a day and age where reality has become, they reject reality, I guess is the best way to say it. That, and it's not just the transgender thing. That's become such a big deal. Uh, my God, here's J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series, and God bless her, man. She's relentless. It's good to have, we got that kind of money she does. That does help you able to stand up and resist all this crap. But saying, you know, don't tell me that men who profess to be girls are girls. They're not. Okay. She's very much an advocate for female rights, recognizing, girls are different than boys. Anybody that's been around it, and anybody that's been around male and female animals, whether dogs or pigs or chickens, I mean, they're different.
Right.
There is a biological difference there, but the difference doesn't translate into inferiority. The difference translates into different, because once you bring those differences together, then all of a sudden you get something new, where the combination of different species, if different, when you bring male and female together, you get kids, and all of a sudden you create something new. Whereas you bring male and male together, you're not getting no kids, okay? Unless you go to the adoption agency. So just spare me. And ditto for the women who hang only with women. Yeah, okay, fine. If you get a donor, fine. But apart from a donor, it ain't happening. So stop. But it's not just that. It's the whole climate change hysteria. Just the fact that we use language like climate change. Well, what do you think we had? Climate stasis? Climate never change? That's why we go back in history and can see that, there were ice ages, and there were tropical periods, that there are other things going on this earth that are beyond man's control, and that frankly, we're a speck of dust on this ball, and we just invest too much importance in ourselves. So we're living really through momentous times, historical times, and I think what you and I are witnessing the decline of the United States, and it ain't going to recover. The United States, what the United States that existed 20 years ago, we're sitting on top of the world. We're calling all the shots. We got all the money. We got all the armaments. And everybody else is just sucking wind. All of a sudden now, we're going to be one of some equals, and we're not going to be able to dictate like we used to. And so at that point, either learn to get along, or people get rid of you. And so I'm hoping we recognize that we can be a force for good in this world. We still have some assets. We don't face the kind of threats that Russia does, of having countries that could invade it all around. We only have to worry about Mexico and Canada, and yet we can't even contain Mexico and all the illegal immigrants coming across that southern border. So, I wish the end of in the movie Scrooge, where Jacob Marley comes back, and Scrooge frightened says to Marley, "Speak comfort to me, Marley." And Marley replies, "I have none to give." And so if you're asking me to speak comfort to you, brother, I have none to give.
And that is an apt way to end the show. Larry, man, thank you so much for joining us again and for giving your take on everything. I really appreciate it. I'll send you the link to this in just a few minutes, man. I really appreciate it.
Well, listen, I always appreciate the invitation. Well, one of these
Thank you, my
days, maybe
brother.
we can do it live and in person.
Yeah. Thank you, my
Well,
brother.
hold
Be
on.
safe.
However, that live and in person is contingent on one thing. You got any decent barbecue in your area?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Oh, Lord.
Oh,
Okay.
all right,
Yeah.
Larry. Thank you so much, man. Thank you
All
a
right.
million.
Later,
All right,
man.
be blessed.
Bye-bye.
All right,
Bye.
everybody. Thank you all for joining me. Please hit the like button and subscribe. Please hit the like button and subscribe. Once again, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining me on the most powerful platform for truth, bar none, anywhere on God's green earth. This is your platform for education, elevation, and edification. This is the Red Pill Diaries. And let me say, we have a packed schedule that is coming up, and we want you to be a part of this. We also, if you like, join all of the other platforms, join our Patreon, join our channel members. We have some old but new goodies that are about to come out on all of the platforms, old interviews that I've done that I've kept in the crate with two-time Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney, Stephen Lettman, humanitarian and activist. It's just so many of them that I've done over the years that we're going to start dropping. Okay, more interviews with Jim Fetzer, Kevin Barrett, all of that stuff. We're going to be dropping more of that I've just kept in the thing, and we're going to be doing more lives. Thank you all for joining me again from the bottom of my heart. I'd like to thank each and every one of you who loves truth. Know that I love you, but know that the love that I have for you will always pale in comparison to the love that God has for you. Until we next speak again, remember this. All right, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous. And remember to treat others as you would have them treat you, not just because it is what you want to do to be seen, but because it is the right thing to do. Hey, mama, you taught me well. Your baby boy still loves you more than life. Deuces, everybody. Thank you. I'm out of here. Peace.